feels like to be a multi-American? Some of you do. So let me take you on a journey of what it feels like to be someone of dual heritage. My journey starts out with my parents, naturally. When in the 70s, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan and they were forced to leave their country. And so there I was, a newborn, in their arms as they were trekking across the globe, searching for safety and security and a place to raise their family. Their story reminded me much of European colonists who actually left Europe over 500 years ago, escaping persecution and seeking freedom. And whether you're here or your history brings you here, willingly or unwillingly, or we are standing on the land of your ancestors, the point is that we're all here for the same reason today. And so we landed on the west coast of America, beautiful California, close to the ocean, and I had a wonderful life. We lived in a very nice town where there were affluent people who lived in the hills, and then there were migrant workers who lived in the agricultural farms or valleys. And so, naturally, I blended in with the other brown children. Sometimes I was called an honorary Mexican. I loved it. And we all seem to have one thing in common. We all seem to be abiding by two sets of rules. There was one set of rules when we were home with our parents and our family. Believe me, we were perfect, obedient children in their eyes, right? Yeah. And then, between the hours of 8 and 3 p.m., we would walk outside to America. It's a very polarizing experience, but it turned us into professional code switchers. And we were able to, at any instant, turn the switch and fit into whatever social situation that we found ourselves in. And so we learned to play the game. I was a rebellious teen. Of course, we all were. My parents were modest, but they were great parents. They loved us very much. And so they regulated our environment quite a bit. And so when we were at home, it was typically with our family. My parents worked opposite shifts of each other so that one of them were always home with us. My grandmother, who lived with us until she passed away, did so because nursing homes don't exist in Afghanistan. And from the cradle to the grave, or either, families take care of one another. And there's such a beauty in that. Every weekend, we'd have family come over. And there were smells coming from the kitchen, circles of women and men talking about politics. And then we'd go play outside. We were the only brown family on the block. And everybody would congregate around us, like, what's going on in that house? Every weekend. Cars lined up. So we did live very polarizing lives. The problem with immigrant families, and my family in particular, was fear, as it is for many things. They were afraid that by integrating their values into America, that they would lose who they were. And so, we went to school, we did our thing, and when my parents would pick me up sometimes from high school, and I'd wipe the black lipstick off my face before they can see it, it was further evidence of that gap growing between us. And I loved Afghan music, so I'd listen to Ahmad Zayed or Haidar Salim, and it was great fun. And then when I'd get into my car, I'd turn up The Cure, 9 Inch Nails, Tupac Shakur, Biggie Smalls, right? And it was a wonderful experience. I loved my parents deeply, and we respected our elders very much. And so I didn't want to disappoint them. as all of us, don't want to disappoint our families. And so I conformed to what they wanted for me as an Afghan girl. And there'd be times where I tried to leave the house in something less than modest, and my dad would call my mom over and say, "Noria, she's turning into an American. Please fix it." At which point my mom would hand me a sweater, put it on my shoulders, walk outside, open up my backpack, stuff it back in there, right? But I really wanted to make my parents happy, so I did what they asked me to do. I stayed nearby after high school, went to college. I entered an arranged marriage at their advice. I played the part of what I thought was a perfect Muslim girl. When 9/11 happened, the world for Muslims shook. Because of the act of a few extremists and their dogmatic values and ideas, we were asked to speak on behalf of our whole religion. And it was a very interesting experience because other religions weren't called to do so. Other people from other faiths were not called to do so. And so, how we were living as Muslims in America, we thought it was a pretty peaceful religion. We valued things like community and love and family. And so when we saw people out in the world representing something that was not our religion or defining it very differently than how we did, it really took us time to scratch our heads. And it was an identity crisis for all of us. And sometimes when we saw the unsuccessful integration of America in other countries, we stayed silent. We couldn't even question any of our politics or foreign affairs, because if we did, that was un-American. So it was a very stressful time. And I remember I had started working because my arranged marriage was going downhill, and I had to start providing for myself and my children. And I entered the workforce, and it was actually a really great experience. I know that corporate America has a bad rap, but it was a place where I could finally use my skills and talents. And what I found was, even in corporate America, I had a lot of cultural blocks. People would give me projects, and I grew very quickly in many of the roles and the challenges that were presented to me. But it's because I kept saying yes. Yes, I'll take on that extra project. Yes, I'll take on an additional team. Sure, we can make that work. And that was a very exhausting experience. And so couple the identity crisis, the exhaustion, feeling in a very polarized world. There was another identity crisis coming on, and it was my own. So I did what I do best, and I code switched. This time I code switched into a white American blonde female. True story. I looked around and I was like, those ladies are having fun. And they're not carrying any of the baggage that we are. Let's give it a try. And so I did. I went to the salon, took a few tries, more than a few, not a lie. And I changed my appearance, and I changed my actions, and I changed myself. Don't get me wrong, it was fun. I bought a motorcycle. I did all the wonderful things that I thought was American. If you want to know the whole story, you can buy the book. And so I thought that was great until I started self-medicating with things like alcohol and caffeine and nicotine to try to cover up the pain of not facing what's happening in our lives. It's funny when you look in the mirror every day, and it's hard to escape. It's hard to escape the person that's looking at you, looking back at you. And there was a pivotal point, and it wasn't earth-shattering or anything, but my kids were looking at me and sort of like, who's this lady? She used to look very different. And she used to be around a lot more. And I realized that I did not want to be this person because it wasn't the authentic me. I was running away from something. I was trying to live in one paradigm or another. But I wasn't accepting of where I belonged, which was in the middle. I was an American woman, I was an Afghan woman, and I was a Muslim woman. And those were the layers of my identity. And so I did 3 things. I re-examined who I was, I redefined who I was, and I reclaimed who I was. So how did I do that? You've heard a lot of childhood stories here today. They're important. You need to re-examine your childhood stories and memories because that is the makeup of who you are. And if there's trauma in your life, that is also the makeup of who you are. And don't do it alone. I had a whole team, therapists, counselors, executive coaches. That's what they're there for. Work through those stories. Redefine who you are. What does it mean to be American today? What does it mean to be an Afghan woman? I knew the culture that I came from and the religion that I was a part of was not what was being portrayed in the media. And so it was my duty to go back and look at those layers and examine those layers and embody those layers in its authentic state. We're so good at separating things, compartmentalizing them in one box or another, but we never look at everything from one viewpoint, from that authentic viewpoint that pulls in all the stories and all your identities. Re-examine, redefine, and then reclaim your American identity. According to the American Immigration Council, there are 43 million people in America that are immigrants. And then another 37 million American-born children who have at least one immigrant parent. That's almost a quarter of our whole population in America, folks. That's a lot of people to not feel like they belong and not feel like they have a place here. So I tell people, honor your heritage, but be the storyteller of your own life. We're often told that we need to melt into the American pot to be included and to feel like we belong. But I'm advocating that now is the time to stand up and stand out as Americans. Stand out as multi-Americans. People used to ask me, where are you from? What does that question really mean? What is your ethnicity, right? So I correct people now. I say, do you mean what is my ethnicity? And they say yes. And I say, I am of Afghan descent. I am an American woman of Afghan descent. And I'm heavily influenced by my Muslim values. And that is what it means to be American. It's leveraging all those layers at once. Because when you do, and you put them together, that unique viewpoint belongs to you, and you speak from a place that's authentic. We need those layers. We need those multi-Americans. And ladies, we flipped the house this time, so yay, right? We now have Native voices. We have Latina voices. We have Muslim voices. These voices are missing from the American narrative. Where are we? Where are you, quarter of population out there? We're here. And it's time to stand up and stand out. You know, and unfortunately, our fear-based politics in America are really having people go back and question the value of their heritage and the value of their roots. But right now is the time to stand up and speak as a multi-American. Because when you find your place between flags or between races, between religions, and not have to feel like you have to pick something or be American, that's what it means to be American. And I'm sorry, but that is what is going to make America great again. The Moxie to embrace being a multi-American. You all should have the Moxie as well. Thank you.